Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be your video for your second assignment for week 5. It's going to be more exponential equations review worksheet. I saw some needs that you guys had last week on your exponential equations stuff and wanted to go through a couple of those things, and hopefully this worksheet will make things a little bit easier. So you don't have to read the directions for this right now because we're going to go through a couple of these problems with me. That's why it's going to be your benefit if you're taking a look at this video. But I want to direct your attention that you need at least an 80% on this assignment in order for it to be considered complete, and I will be sending these back to you if you do not complete these. And I also, now that I'm thinking about this right here, you're going to need to click Turn In on Google Classroom. That way I can send them back to you if you guys need it. Okay? So, last week you guys seemed to have some trouble matching equations with their graph. And so I'm going to do one of them with you. So looking at the first one, it says f of x equals 2 to the x. Sorry that this looks so funky, guys. I just did some formatting a little bit differently with this worksheet. And so we have 6 of these graphs to choose from. We've got to then go and open up Desmos, which I've already done. F of x, or y, you can either put either one in, f of x equals 2 to the x. Okay, and so we've got a y-intercept right here at 0, 1. Let's take a look at these graphs down here. Which one has a y-intercept at 0, 1? Not A, that's at 0, -1. B is at 0, 1. C is at 0, -1/2. D is at 0, 4. 0, -4, 0, 1/2. Our correct answer is B. And we can also double check the second point right here. So according to this graph, there should be another point at 1, 2. I can double check that right here by clicking on this point, and it will say 1, 2. So that means that these 2 points, just like letter B, that's the correct answer. So what you guys will do is you'll delete this and you'll type B. Okay, that's how you'll select your answer. So you're just going to be typing into these little boxes. Okay. Now let's go down to number 7. It says write an equation for the graph below. Okay, so now it gives you the graph and you're asked to pick which function. Now you can reason through it one of 2 ways. You can take a look at the graph right here and you can decide where the asymptote is, and you can eliminate answers based off of that. Or you can graph these equations and see which one matches up with your graph. So let's take a look at A. A is 4 times 2 to the x. 4. You can either do times using the asterisk and 8, or you can put the 2 in parentheses. Let's put another one in here. B is 5 times 2 to the x. C is 6 times 1/4 times 6 to the x. That one's kind of a funky one. 6 times 1/4 times 6 to the x. Okay, and then the last one is 1/4 times 6 to the x. Okay, so we can look at each of these equations and we can see which one matches up best with our graph. Okay, so if you look at it, it's really close to the y-axis, so it has a really small y-intercept, which makes me think that it's probably this purple one right here. Really small y-intercept. So my guess is it's going to be the 1/4 times 6 to the x. So what you'll do is you'll pick up the circle, and you're going to drag it down to whatever answer choice you select, and that will give you your answer that you'll pick. Okay? And then you'll do the other ones on your own. And now moving on to writing exponential growth and decay equations given the percentages. A lot of people ask me questions on this one, and so I've included some notes for you guys. An exponential function is where x is in the exponents, and then you have your a, which is your initial value, and then your b, which is your growth or decay factor. And this is how you find it, by doing 1 plus r or 1 minus r, and r is the rate, and it must be a decimal. You guys all have this in your notes or in your journal. And so I'm going to pick a couple of these ones to do. It says, write an exponential equation that represents each situation below. The initial amount is 448, and the rate of growth is 20%. Okay, so we've got our initial amount. I've almost forgotten it. Our initial amount is 448. And the rate of growth is 20%. Okay, so now pulling back up this would be considered a mild problem. So if we were to write out our equation, y equals a times b to the x, our a is our initial amount. And so that means our initial amount is going to plug in for a, y equals 448. And now we have to find our b, that's our growth or decay factor. And lucky for you, these mild ones already tell you that it's 20% growth. So what we've got to do is convert this 20% into our r value. Our r value has to be a decimal. So I'm going to move the decimal place 2 places over to the left. That's going to be how I convert from percent to decimal. So that means I've got 0.20. To find my b value for growth, it's 1 plus your r value, or your rate. So it's going to be 1 plus 0.2, which is just 1.2. So that's going to be my growth factor. That's going to go in my parentheses, and then I'm going to add my exponent x. So my final answer is going to be 448. What you'll do is you'll delete all of this. I'm going to type in y equals 448, parentheses 1.2, and to get to the x, it's not going to be like in Desmos where when you push the caret button, it goes up into a superscript. You'll just have to have the little caret like that, and that will still count for me. I'm going to put the little x like that. Okay. 448 times 1.2 to the x. All right. Excuse me. It says a radioactive isotope, I'm going to do the odds, decays at a rate of 50% per minute if the isotope begins with 220 milligrams. Write an equation. Okay, so now going back to my notes, going back to my scratch work here, it says that it starts out at 200 milligrams. That's going to be my initial amount. So y equals 200 is going to be my starting point. And it decays at 50%. So I've got my 50% that I've got to convert into a decimal. I'll move it 2 places over to the left. That's going to give me 0.5. For decay, my b is going to be 1 minus my r value, or my decimal. So 1 minus 0.5 is just 0.5. That's going to go in my parentheses as my decay factor to the x. So again, I'll type in my equation, y equals 200, parentheses. You could do it several different ways. You could do 0.5, you could do 0.5, you could do 1/2 to the x. Okay? Number 5, for each equation, identify the initial amount, whether the exponential function represents growth or decay, and the rate of growth or decay. This one's an awesome one. So I don't have you guys circling anything. Actually, I'm going to have you guys do that. Hold, please. Okay. So we got number 5, g to the x equals 82.6 times 1.7 to the x. Okay, the initial amount is my a value. So that means my initial amount is 82.6. That's my a value. Looking at my b value, looking at the 1.7 in parentheses, because, looking back on my notes, because it is greater than 1, my b value, or my number in parentheses, is greater than 1, this represents an exponential growth equation. Now my rate is going to be what I either added or subtracted to 1 in order to get my value in parentheses. So because my value in the parentheses is 1.7, it's greater than 1. That means I'm going to do 1 plus r is 1.7. That's what my equation would be if I were to find this 1.7. And now you're going to solve for r. What's the inverse of a positive 1 right here? You'll subtract 1. So that means r equals 1.7 minus 1 is 0.7. Now that's a decimal. We're doing this now in reverse. To make this into a percent, you'd move it 2 places to the right, which would mean that my growth rate is 70%. So my rate is 70%. And you guys will do number 6. Okay? Number 7. Jeff's starting salary was $42,000 per year. Number 7. So he starts off at $42,000. Jeff received a 5% raise every year after his first year. It gives you the equation. It says how much is Jeff making 7 years later. This is very similar to the Evaluate Exponentials IXL link that you guys did the other day. So I'm going to put this equation into my Desmos. M of x just means y. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. Y equals 42,000 times 1.05 to the x. And I want to find the value I want to find the value when x is 7. So that means I'm going to go to Settings, Table. I want to find how much money is going to be in the account, or how much he makes after 7 years. And you'll round it so it's $59,098. So that means that it's going to be $59,098. Okay, and you guys will do number 8. And we're going to keep doing these types of equations onto this next page. Please let me know if you guys have any questions, guys. Hopefully that video was helpful.